So now I'm working with the academic side, but I'm very, very excited because this position allows me to be part of two things that I'm very, very passionate about, which is cybersecurity and education. And I'm really believing in Montgomery College's mission, and that's what I'm here. So I'm here to talk to you. Thank you, Kimberly, again, for inviting me. And we're going to talk about blockchain technology today. And when Kimberly invited me and she sent me a list of the topics that she was interested in presenting here, I chose blockchain, and I've got to give you a warning and a heads up. Blockchain is not the easiest technology to explain or to grasp at first try. I'm going to do my best to make it, to understand, to explain it to you in a way that it can be understood. So I hope that I can achieve that. But most importantly, I think that we're going to talk about the technology itself, but we're going to talk about why is this important? What are the applications? What are the real life implications that this technology may have in your lives? Please do come in. So that, again, I think that when we talk about cybersecurity, alluding to, before we start the presentation, alluding to some of the career paths that cybersecurity can offer you. Well, cybersecurity, again, is a field that is a little bit misunderstood. A lot of people think it's new. It is not new in any way, shape, or form. The term cybersecurity may be new, but the government has been doing this for years. The government still calls it information assurance. And it's nothing. The need to protect information systems arose very early in the development of said systems. So this is something that is just being evolving a lot. And the field has become such a hot topic in the news and in just the popular culture lately, is because that with the explosion of devices, of now that we live our lives digitally, really the need to secure that information for everybody. Like I said in the beginning, only the federal government, big corporations have the budget, the expertise, and the need to protect that information. But now that need has spread to every single person, you and I, our parents, our community. Everybody needs their information protected. That is why there's such a need for cybersecurity professionals. With that said, one of the misconceptions that I always talk about is like when people think cybersecurity, the first thing they imagine is either the hacker that is attacking a system or the defender that is defending a system. And that is true. That is actually a big part of cybersecurity, but it's not the only thing. There's a lot more things, a lot more career paths in cybersecurity. And if you guys, anybody's interested, I'll be around to speak more about cybersecurity in particular and what I believe is important, some of the other paths that are available, and if necessary, how Montgomery College can help you start that path. With that said, I would like to start my talk with the blockchain. And if please, we can turn to the first slide in the presentation. The people on the table, I appreciate that. So let's start here. Blockchain, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, what does it all mean? How are they related? So let's start by saying that blockchain is the technology that enables the existence of cryptocurrency, among other things. It can be applied, but it's mostly these days being used for cryptocurrency. And we're going to talk about that. So what is a cryptocurrency? A cryptocurrency is a medium of exchange, just like a US dollar, a euro, a yen. And we're going to talk about the differences between a cryptocurrency and regular currency, The other thing is like Bitcoin is probably the one that everybody is most familiar with when it comes to cryptocurrencies, but there are a ton of other ones. There's Litecoin, there's Ethereum, and they keep on coming. But one thing that they all have in common is that they are all based in blockchain technology. So again, blockchain, you cannot talk blockchain without talking about cryptocurrencies. And the other thing that is super important to understand, you cannot talk about blockchain without talking about encryption. So let's talk a little bit about encryption. And again, we're not going to go too deep into this, but it's a concept that is super important to understand if we are to understand what blockchain is. So next slide, please. Thank you so much. So what is encryption? Here in this slide, you can see you have the technical explanation. And what it is, basically, encryption is a way to hide something and that we want to make sure that and the purpose of hiding, of obfuscating, making it unintelligible to other people is so that it can be kept privy to only the parties that are supposed to have this information. So basically you have in that graphic, you can see that encryption has 4 components. I'm sorry, let's go back. Yeah, encryption has 4 components. First of all, we have plain text or just the message that you want to encrypt. Then we have a key. We're going to talk about what a key is. Then we have an algorithm, which is the method of that encryption happening, and the result, which is, after you go, you apply the key and the algorithm, what you're going to get is what we call ciphertext, or the message is scrambled, being unintelligible to the people that does not have the tools or are privy to it. And the process of decryption is actually the reverse process. So you start with the ciphertext, you apply the same key and same algorithm, and as a result, you get your plain text. So that is the technical explanation. Now I'm going to try to give more of a layman's explanation to it, and I'm going to use a case, that everybody may be able to understand. So this is, I'm going to use myself because this is how I started unknowingly my career in cybersecurity. So I see that there's a lot of young people here, but I see a couple of people of my vintage. So I apologize for the young people that are not going to get the historical or cultural references in the following example. So this happened, during the roaring 80s. Can you imagine myself, a strapping young man, sporting a mullet, a lime green t-shirt, parachute pants? All right, so back then, believe it or not, guys, in the cereal boxes, there used to be a toy. They used to come with a toy. And some of the toys were okay, but one of the toys that really, really caught my attention was what they used to call a decryption ring or a decryptor. And it was just this little plastic device, a round device. And it was 2 rings, a concentric ring in the center and an outside ring that you could move. The inside ring contained the alphabet and, the numbers, the characters of the Latin alphabet, so A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The outside ring also contained those characters, but you can move them. The idea here was that you can move the outside ring a number of places and find, so you can substitute the letters. So let's say that we moved the outside ring 2 places to the left, the A became a C in that ring, the B became a D, and so forth and so on. So this is how you use to encrypt your messages. So you took the message that you wanted to write from the inner ring, but you wrote it with the characters from the outside ring. This is the simplest form of encryption and is being used since Roman times. Actually, that is called a Caesar cipher. And again, we can talk more about encryption, but that is now. So that is the method. That is the algorithm. That decryption ring is the algorithm. So now you have to come up with a key. So now, following with my example, my best buddy and I, we had these rings, and we had decided that for any information that we wanted to keep secret and it was so important, we were going to encrypt and decrypt the messages accordingly. So we came up with a key, and this is the other part, that the key has to be set up in advance by the 2 parts. We said, okay, we're going to use 4 left. So whenever I send you a message, an encrypted message, you know that you have to bring out your ring and move it 4 left, and that's how you will decrypt it. So that's that. So I had to, tell my buddy something super, super important that I didn't want nobody else to find out. The message was like, I like Heather Robinson. And and this is I had to be specific because back then there were like 4 Heathers in the class. Again, this is the 80s. Anyways, the fact that so I passed the paper to my buddy. He produced his ring, he decrypted, and he acknowledged. Okay, so now we knew. Now with that, these days obviously computers can do much better as far as keys and as the algorithm. Computers are great at processing mathematical operations, complex mathematical operations in a short period of time. So encryption today is still based on those, the keys and the algorithms. Just to give you an example, and there's a ton of different types of encryption. Again, outside the scope of this conversation, many different types of encryptions that they use different types of algorithms that have been developed by people way smarter than me. As a matter of fact, some types of encryption even have the name of their creators on them, like RSA. Those are the initials of the creators of that particular algorithm type of encryption. Also, the keys have gone from having 4 to the left to very complex and long keys. There's one type of encryption that uses the product of the square root of 2 very large prime numbers. Try to get your head around that. That's just the key. So again, the idea here, most type of encryptions use these 4 elements. And the reason here is that you want to keep the confidentiality. Confidentiality is the concept in cybersecurity that says that only the people that are supposed to look into it should have access to. Now, I'm going to talk about a type of encryption that is related to our conversation called hashing. Hashing is a little different than what we've seen in the sense that you have the plain text, you have the key, you have the algorithm, but instead of having a ciphertext, the result is something called a digest, which is a string of text. And let me give you an example. So let's say that you want to hash or create a hash for Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. You know, you want to make it unintelligible, even though some people might actually argue that the plain text is unintelligible, as it is. as you know, it was written non-English. But anyways, let's say that you take Romeo and Juliet and pass it to a hashing mechanism. The result will be this string, probably a long string, 15, 20 characters. That doesn't mean anything. It's just a key, is a digest. So it's going to be something like KR976, whatever. Now, let's say that you go back to that plain text and you just change 1 comma, 1 character, 1 space in the whole text of Romeo and Juliet, and you hash it again, the digest that will come out should be completely different from it. So if you compare the hash from the first and the hash from the second, you can go like, oh, somebody's trying to mess with the bar here. They have changed my Romeo and Juliet. That is what hashing does. Hashing proves another aspect of cybersecurity, which in this case, it's not the confidentiality, but just to make sure that the document has not been, tampered with. And this is the type of encryption that blockchain uses. So everybody good with that? I mean, so that's what encryption does. And again, so if we can move to the next slide, now we can start, explaining. So what is blockchain? And this is the part where it is a little bit that we have to try to wrap our heads around it. Again, we have the technical kind of concept of what it is blockchain is a system of recording information in a way that it makes it difficult or impossible to change. That is basically the most important part about it. A blockchain is essentially a digital ledger of transactions that is duplicated and distributed across the entire network or computer systems of the blockchain. So let's start, just breaking that a little bit, because we have used a couple of technical terms there. So distributed ledger. What is a ledger? Let's start with the concept of what a ledger is. Basically, it's just a record keeping. In the past, we used to have everything ledger, the manual books, that you will record every transaction, every visit, every something. That is a ledger. So, but that's one book that is located in one central location, and the people that is authorized to write on it will write on it or will delete what it's not necessary. But the same concept. So a digital ledger is not a physical book, is not a physical record, but it's digital. And what is distributed? Distributed means that is not in one physical location. You can also think of a ledger. If you look at the Excel spreadsheet that has a bunch of entries, that is a ledger, but it's not distributed because it's only placed in one location. It exists only in one place. Distributed is when that ledger has been spread out to different computers or nodes or parts. And that is the graphic that you're seeing there. As you can see, it's a graphical representation of a network of people that have sharing that distributed ledger. So everybody has a part of the ledger. And this is the thing about blockchain. That with blockchain, let's start with that. It's a distributed ledger, but blockchain is a special type of distributed ledger. in the sense that nobody has a full copy of it. Everybody, every node has part of it. So if we're talking about transactions, every single node in the system, in the network, will have a few transactions, okay? But everybody has access to it. But this is where it becomes very interesting. What everybody does have a copy of, every single person. So everybody is a record of the transactions. Every time that a transaction is made, a record is created and is copied to the whole network, regardless of what the transactions that you contain are. So you contain part of the transactions, but everybody contains a record of every transaction that is being made, even though you don't have that transaction. Then again, this is the part that I said is a little difficult to understand because everybody has it, but nobody has it. Now you will think, why would you develop a system like that? Why would you go through all that trouble? What is the benefit of creating a system like that? Well, because it's tamper-proof, in the sense that if anybody wanted to change a transaction, doesn't matter if it's in node A, he or she will have to change the record of that transaction as well in every single node in the system. So you may change the transaction, but you will have to change the record of that in every single one of the nodes. Furthermore, and this is where hashing comes with, if we can go to the next slide, because this is where it all comes together. Yeah, let's please move to the next slide. Thank you so much. So how this works is that hashing is used every time that a transaction is made, is hashed. This is how we know. So everybody receives the hash of the transaction that was made. So if anybody wants to change a transaction, we'll have to change all the hashes in all the instances. That is what, this is the big, theory behind blockchain. And that's what blockchain does. Again, we can look at the graphic and you can see what I've been talking about in a more graphical form. So somebody requests a transaction, and then the requested transaction is broadcast to a peer-to-peer network, which again, is a distributed ledger, okay? And it could be consisting of computers or servers, known as nodes. Then the validation part, and this is where the hashing comes, and then the verified transaction, it gets created. What everybody is like agreed, okay, yep, this is a legit transaction. Everybody gets a copy, everybody gets a hash, everybody has validated it. So now it goes into the official record. Again, once verified transaction is combined with other transactions to create a new block of data on the ledger. Now we get finally to what this technology is called blockchain, because all the nodes are connected in a chain, and every time a transaction is made, a block is created. Therefore, the name blockchain. So this is where the name comes from. Once the transaction has been verified, then it becomes part of the ledger. Now everybody has it. So this is the underlying technology behind cryptocurrency. There's other, potential applications to this, which we will discuss. But anybody has any questions about this? Yes, please.
So, because this is a distributed blockchain model, who maintains that master record? How do we validate that master record?
That is a very good question. So in the case of the application for cryptocurrencies, this is why we have different types of cryptocurrencies. Again, this is a distributed ledger. So it's applied to a network of people that is participating, maintaining the blockchain, or if you are to buy, Bitcoin or whatever it is, you will become part of that. Now, who maintains that? Again, it's decentralized. It's a mechanism. Another mechanism has to be built to incorporate and to send and receive those transactions. When a transaction is received, somebody wants to buy Bitcoin or somebody has made Bitcoin, which we're going to talk about how that happens. That is recording that mechanism. That mechanism starts distributing that to the ledger, so it becomes part of a permanent record. So again, there's a couple of different ways to implement this. Again, this is a high view, but that's why we also have different types of blockchain. So blockchain is the technology. but there's different ways that you can implement it, different ways that you can apply it. And this is why we have different types of cryptocurrencies, for example. So each cryptocurrency uses its own method to apply blockchain. Now, in theory, the technology is almost impossible, or should be impossible for somebody to forge a record, because there's always a content. The other thing about blockchain is that you can go back every transaction, since every time that something changes, you can trace it back to the very origin. That is the other part about this technology that is unique. So that is the other part of transparency, is that everybody that participates on it has view to the record. You can view a transaction, and it's really easy to see if the transaction has been, messed with, because again, through the hash, you will see that the hash does not correspond, and everybody has a copy of the records. So again, the fact that you can potentially compromise one of the nodes, but it will be quite clearly that somebody was trying to compromise, or transaction has been compromised, they will revert to the master record. So that is in, there was another question.
Who decides that this block is legit?
Again,
I would like to control.
Yes, that's a very good question. The block it's verified after the transaction is being made and is being hashed and it's being validated. Again, and this is a weak point of this, and this is where a lot of some cryptocurrencies have actually been hacked, because this can be potentially be one of the weak links. You have to at some point trust the mechanism that you have put in place for the hashing and the validation of the transaction, and then after it's been validated, it just gets sent to everybody. But yeah, and then again, it all goes with the type of implementation that the blockchain applies.
And the second part when you finish.
Of course.
So in real life, when we say transaction, when we say blockchain, are we talking about me interested in Dogecoin, and I purchase Dogecoin? That starts the blockchain and pushes out to the distributed level.
Correct. Again,
For more, if I sell it or I
Yes.
use it to buy something, is this what generates?
another transaction. Correct.
Okay, I'm just trying to see.
No. That's a great question. That is a very good question, because that's why when we say transaction, we think that it's only one thing, and that's where I was saying that you can trace back that transaction to what happened. When a Bitcoin is originated, and we're going to talk about these, how these things are created. This gets recorded in the ledger. There's a new Bitcoin, and that Bitcoin will have some kind of serial identifier. So then somebody buys the Bitcoin or buys a part of the Bitcoin. That's one transaction, and then that person uses that Bitcoin to transform it into actual currency or to buy something else. That's another transaction, but they are concatenated. And this is what is a blockchain, because, and then you can actually see, you can trace back all the transactions associated with every single one of the Bitcoins, and at what point and who did what. But there's another factor that is the anonymity here, that that there's a record of what happened, but not necessarily who did it. And that's part of what we're going to discuss a little bit more when we talk about the cryptocurrencies. Sir?
So the security issue is the mechanism they choose to hash by?
No, the hashing itself, well, there's, again, going back, there's a lot of different ways to hashing mechanisms. And some of them are stronger than others, but in reality, the part that is more vulnerable is not the hashing mechanism itself, but how you accept, how you validate that transaction after it's been hashed, how you make sure that it's legit, and you say, yeah, it is legit, and you start spreading that hash to the ledger. Does that make sense? All right, thank you. No, these are great questions. Again, we're not trying to get too deep into this, and this is what I said. This is a kind of a little bit of you have to wrap your head around it, But now, if we are, let's continue our conversation, because let's talk about cryptocurrency. And this is, I think, that the main application that blockchain has. And again, the main difference between cryptocurrencies and digital currencies, and just regular currencies is who is behind them. And then this is where we're gonna, start exploring at why, there's some controversy about the value and the use of cryptocurrencies. So, traditional currencies, the dollar, the euro, the yen, are backed by central banks, by governments. When you have a dollar, when you show me a dollar, what it is a note saying that the United States government is good for it. It's a promissory note. Back when 100 years, more than 100 years ago, when we were using the gold standard, and this going back to your macroeconomics class, when we were using the gold standard, that dollar meant that the United States government had a dollar worth of gold in its reserves. But in the industrial area and a lot of countries growing, they quickly realized that there's not enough gold in the world to back up the economies of all these growing economies. At that time, the standard became what we have now, the fiat standard, which basically what it's saying that when you have a dollar, that the United States government is saying we are good for it. We are backing that. When you have a euro, that means that the European Central Bank is saying we are good for that. A yen, the Japanese central bank says we are good for that. So it's a promissory note, but somebody is backing, somebody's behind it. With cryptocurrencies, there's no central authority, government, institution that is backing cryptocurrencies. We're going to talk a little bit about how they are created. And so how do we assign value to something that nobody's backing? Because, we live in a world that we assign value on the offer and demand based on something tangible most of the time. It's got to be either a product or a service. But cryptocurrencies are really not tangible. You go to the internet, you search for cryptocurrencies, and there are some pictures there of actual coins. That's just a representation. Cryptocurrencies does not exist in any physical form. They are kept and maintained in these distributed ledgers. So let's go back a little bit to the next slide about how these things are created. Let's talk about that, and then we can come back to discuss more about cryptocurrencies, the pros and cons, and etc. So cryptocurrencies are mined. What does that mean? How are they created? Basically, cryptocurrencies, the first cryptocurrency was Bitcoin. And nobody has really come out and said that they invented it. It's being largely attributed to a Japanese, IT guru. He has never come up and say, I invented. It is most likely he did. He invented the first blockchain and the method to create Bitcoins. First of all, let's start with one thing. There's not really a finite number of dollars. The United States government can continue printing dollars as they see fit, as they are comfortable to backing them up. With Bitcoins, there's a limited number of coins that are going to be produced. We haven't reached that number yet, but there's a finite number, and they are produced by really working. You have to, the way that it's set up is that you have to resolve these very, very complex mathematical operations, to mint, to create a Bitcoin. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but that's how they are created. You have to basically use computers to create them. The mechanism that whoever devised Bitcoin, it's like you have to resolve it. And every time as they become more scarce, it becomes harder and harder to mine it. So whoever mined the first 100 Bitcoins was way, way easier than whoever is trying to mine a Bitcoin right now, because it gets harder in the complexity of operations as you go up, and then there's going to be a point that whoever mints the last Bitcoin is definitely going to have to do a lot of work. And how that work is done. You see that picture? That's actually a representation of special computers that are used to mine Bitcoin. Again, because they require a lot of processing power and a lot of energy, by the way. Two, these are computers that are specifically designed for that purpose and that purpose only. Actually, they don't even use, most of them, CPUs, which is, the brain of your computer, but rather uses GPUs. GPU is very similar to a CPU, but it's used for graphic cards. So when you are displaying something in your computer, in your phone, in your iPad, whatever it is, it's going from the CPU to the GPU. The GPU, it's faster. It can, I'm sorry, let me go back. When you're trying to render graphics, it's very intensive, process intensive. It requires a lot of mathematical calculations and computations to create graphics in a computer screen. So that's why now, at the beginning, everything was being handled by the CPU, but then when they realized that graphics were becoming more and more sophisticated, you know, the computer scientists decided that, no, we need a separate unit just to deal with the graphics parts. And that's where, you know, graphics cards are available, etc. So they use those type of processors because they are super intensive. You see also those fans there because they generate a lot of heat. They consume a lot of power, and you need a lot of them. That's a little picture, you know. Actually, there's people that is mining Bitcoins that have whole centers, thousands of these computers churning to create these Bitcoins. So that requires, first of all, big investment. It needs a lot of energy, a lot of power. You know, it generates a lot of heat. You need to maintain and upkeep all these machines. And this is where we can argue what the reward is. You know, is it worth mining these Bitcoins? As of now, the answer is still yes. But we're going to talk about why is that and why, at my point, it will not be worth it anymore. So the other part, and again, this is the way that you will do it. You know, actually, there are computers out there that you can buy and start mining Bitcoin on your own living room. You can buy some of these, you know, devices. They are a little expensive. They are very noisy. They consume a lot of energy. But if you're an entrepreneur, you can buy one of these, connect it in your living room, and try to mine a Bitcoin. You know, now it will take probably a couple of years. I don't know how long it will take for a single computer to mine a Bitcoin. And that's why these operations are operations of scale. But, you know, leave to the cyber criminals to come up with novel and innovative solutions to problems of scale and distribution. This is why now they have developed malware. So if your computer is running slow, it may be because it has been infected with cryptocurrency mining malware. So what they're doing is right now they're using unsuspecting innocent people computers, you know, that they have infected, and they are using that processing power to mine Bitcoins. What they do is, since the computer by itself will not be able to generate Bitcoin, they aggregate the power of thousands of computers that they have owned or pawned, you know, and they are using that power, thank you very much, on their behalf, to generate their income. That is another way that this is being produced. So now going back to the discussion, if there's any questions about this, by the way, let's at this point. If not, let's continue talking about then why the price of these cryptocurrencies has varied so wildly. You know, again, I think that I was talking to my colleagues yesterday at the lab when I was sharing with them this presentation, and I was asking, have you invested in Bitcoin? You know, have you? What do you think about this? And the posture. So I know for a fact of a person that made back with Bitcoin. He bought some Bitcoins when they were like $500. When they came out, the first Bitcoin, I think it was sold for like $25 or something like that. But then, you know, the price has gone wildly. It got $50,000 or over that. But this guy bought these when they were $500 years ago. And he was able to sell them when they were about $50,000. He was a guy in his 30s, he retired. But that's one case. Most cases are actually the other way. And people have lost a lot of money because they've seen this as a way to make money really quick, you know, and they have invested large amounts of money in this, and now they're in the red. Actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to embarrass my coworkers a little bit, but a couple of them kind of admitted that they invested some money and they're now in the red. Not a lot of money, you know, again, because we tech people, we like to follow these trends. So a couple of them invested a couple $1,000, and right now they found it that they're in the red. Will they be able to get back to those $2,000 or make those $2,000, $5,000? I don't know. The main problem with cryptocurrencies, again, it's two things. who's backing it. So the value is assigned strictly on offer and demand and what people think is worth it. Again, when you have $1, you know who's backing. Even when you buy shares of a company, when you buy shares of Apple, you are aware of the value of Apple, or the value that has been assigned to Apple. So you know there's some value behind it. But when you buy Bitcoin, who's backing that? So that is the number one thing. The other thing is that all these cryptocurrencies, due to what we talked about, that they are so difficult to trace in a way. You can, who own it and what transactions are being made are the preferred currency for a lot of criminal activity. As a matter of fact, as you know, you probably have also heard a lot about ransomware. And every ransomware, again, is when actors come and pretty much hijack your computer or your computers in your business, encrypt the information. Here goes again, encryption. They encrypt and they only have the key, and they say, okay, we have your information encrypted. If you want the key, we'll provide you key, but you have to pay us 2/3, 1/2, 2 Bitcoins. And they always ask for Bitcoins. Why is that? Because again, if you will say deposit it in my bank account is, they know, the IRS knows, the government knows, it's really easily traceable. Bitcoins are not that way. Yeah, the existence of the transaction will be on the ledger, but it's hard to know who used it for what. So that's why it's a preferred. And the other thing is like it's really easy to convert Bitcoin to regular currency, again, because you can sell it. You get paid in Bitcoin, and then you go to these cryptocurrencies exchanges, and then you sell it for whatever is worth at the time. So now you just have converted money gotten from ill gains without having to launder it or any of the other stuff that more professional and serious criminals have to go through. Now you have free money. So that is the two things that cryptocurrencies have to contend with. The instability, that nobody's backing them. Now, I understand the concept too that a lot of people are pro cryptocurrencies because it doesn't require a government, doesn't require a centralized bank. There comes some political ideas behind it, and I understand all that. As a matter of fact, I believe that all currencies at some point will become digital in some form, but they will only be good. People will only accept them as far as like who's backing them. The problem is like nobody's really backing them, and it has this stigma, for better or worse, about being the currency of criminals and the underworld. So that's this is the application that it is right now. Why don't we go now and in the minutes that we have still, let's talk about some other potential uses for blockchain, because blockchain can like right now we're using it for that, but the technology itself, if you take a look at it, is a great way to maintain records that cannot be fudged in any way, shape, or form. So some of the applications here, as you can see from this slide, is like, you can create consumers for the automotive. I mean, I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, consumers could use the blockchain to manage fractional ownership of autonomous cars. That's a possible application. I think that the most real ones will be like financial services, voting, and healthcare. Again, because here we're dealing with records. But here is the problem. You can actually, all these things, financial services, voting, healthcare, deal with records that are actually very sought after by criminals, to either change them or steal them. So by applying blockchain to these records, we can make it more transparent, more secure. But here is the crux of that. As a matter of fact, I was saying to an attendee here that I wrote a paper, a couple of years ago when I was for my master's in cybersecurity. One of my classes, it was like, what are the 3 technologies that you think are going to influence cybersecurity the most in the next 5-10 years? And I said blockchain, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. And I said blockchain because the possible applications, you could use it for good. But this is the crux. It's going to be 2 things. Everybody will have to, let's say that the healthcare industry decides, okay, we're going to start doing all our records in blockchain. That'd be great. But that would require that everybody conforms and agrees to certain type of blockchain and implements it. So that's it. Then you may have to go through regulatory processes and other stuff. So that's kind of like the mountain to climb. But there are potential applications for this technology that, it can be used. And, if we can move to the last slide, let's talk a little bit about, so let's go to the last slide. Some possible, final thoughts on blockchain technology. Again, it's a review. So when we talk about the benefits, we talk about increased transparency, accurate tracking, the permanent ledger, and the cost reduction. Again, because if you implement a ledger, it could be a lot of savings, in the way that you have to keep and maintain records. They don't know, of course, it's a complex technology. As we only touch the surface, by the way. And if I made any mistakes in the representation of that, I apologize. But I just wanted to give you kind of like a real overview of what the technology is, the regulatory implication, as I just said, implementation changes again, and competing platforms. Again, there could be like, again, let's go back to the case of healthcare. Let's say that healthcare says, okay, we want to start using blockchain. I'm pretty sure there is going to be, as with everything, there's going to be some companies developing their own blockchain and they're going to say, I'm better than, I'm better than you. My proposal is better than yours. And at the beginning, you're going to have 10 different companies competing. At the end, it's only going to be one or two that takes most of the market share. But again, that could also create some kind of problems for that. So that's more or less what I have for you guys. If you have any questions, comments, and I really appreciate your attendance here. I hope that you did, gain something from this discussion. You've been a great audience, and I would like to thank the people that is attending this meeting virtually as well. But yeah, I'm gonna hang around if you have any questions, comments, sir.
Well, I was gonna ask you about that cereal you had with the decoder in it.
Yeah.
No, but so with the metaverse, whole different topic, whole different
Yes.
idea. When we're talking cryptocurrency, there's a lot of things leading into the metaverse when it comes to space. Where there's purchasing happening, there's procurement happening through digital currency, mainly crypto.
Yep.
Are you seeing, we're not there yet, but are you seeing, do you have concerns personally about what's happening with metaverse and taking cryptocurrency and into, my understanding, purchasing homes, purchasing houses, and purchasing, there's so much you can do in that world.
Yeah.
Crypto was driving the consumer space.
Correct. And that's a great question and a great comment. And you know what? I think that, I talk a little bit about the adoption or either the resistance or the willingness to adopt that. I believe, and like I mentioned, I think that we're going to move to digital currencies. And I think that that's the way that it's going to go. And the metaverse is a great thing because that's where we are moving. I'm a big fan of the fiction writer, William Gibson, and he kind of envisioned all this already. And I think that we are going to that future, and that future is going to be here before we know it, honestly. And I think that cryptocurrencies are going to be part of that future. It's the inevitable way. Right now, most of us, I no longer carry actual bills in my wallet. I haven't been carrying real money in my wallet for years. Because at some point, even those credit cards and everything, we are moving, towards that future. Yes. But talking about Bitcoin today, let's take, and then again, I'm not trying to make a political case out of it, but let's take the case of El Salvador, whose president is a millennial and has decided to adopt Bitcoin as an official currency in the country of El Salvador. So you can buy things, the other official currency in El Salvador is dollars. You can buy a house, either legally with Bitcoin or with dollars. But what is being the adoption? And and again, I think that the idea is good. And actually, one of my colleagues yesterday pointed out that when El Salvador decided to adopt Bitcoin as an official currency, the price actually went up, but after that went down again. If we look at that case, El Salvador has bought a considerable amount of Bitcoin with public money at a price, and they're actually on the red right now. So the people of El Salvador right now is millions of dollars, you know, in the red for this transaction. Again, I'm not saying that that may not change, but and this is a very good case to study and to look into, because again, El Salvador is a smaller country, you know, smaller economy, but it's an officially recognized, you know, country, the United Nations and the banking systems, etc. So if somebody's, it is a really good case study. What I see is that, in my opinion, and this is my personal opinion, I don't think that this is going to turn out well for them, honestly, unless he's able to do something completely different. But that's a good case study. And that's part of, I guess, a part of this discussion. And again, I think that this is great because when we're talking about blockchain technologies, like, why do I need to know about this? How these affect my personal life? This is where, you know, the rubber meets the road, so to speak. This is where these technologies are affecting your everyday life on one way or another. And that's what I think Kimberly is trying to, you know, highlight in this series of events. It's, you know, how are these technologies affecting our everyday life? And why it's important for me to have at least somewhat knowledge about these things. So yeah, thank you for your question. That was very, very good. Thank you. Any other questions?
Do you have any reading recommendation for beginners or websites to search?
Actually, that's a good one. No, I wasn't prepared for that. I'm sorry. But if you do, you know, like a Google search, again, this could get really deep into the technology itself. But I think that if you're really trying to think about the possible implications, uses of the adoption of this technology, specifically with cryptocurrencies, I think there's a lot of information available. I'll try to see if there's anything and that I can recommend. And if there's anything, I will share it with Kimberly and she can share it with everybody. But thank you. That's a good, thank you. I will be more prepared next time. Dr. Sherman.
If I might recommend.
Please, please.
The best intro that you can get to blockchain and cryptos is if you don't already have an app on your phone for Coinbase and have a Coinbase account, just start it and you can get cryptos just by watching explainer videos.
Oh.
Give coin.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you know, we have an expert here, by the way, too, sir.
I would recommend a book by the author Melanie Swan,
Uh-huh.
So she approaches at a very high level. There's not any technology whatsoever. There's no math. It's purely conceptual.
Thank you.
There's another book by Tapscott, Tapscott, and Dan Tapscott, and I think his brother is the two brothers wrote that book. That's very good too. It was very, very high into government use cases and so on.
Oh.
Distributed apps, distributed administration, distributed governments, and everything distributed. That was a little disconcerting because those concepts were a little.
Yes.
Melanie's focuses more on like blockchain 1 and now we're to blockchain 2.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. I appreciate those. Thank you so much. And that was actually, thank you so much to both of you. And again, this is the purpose, I guess, of these things, as you know, to open our minds to just kind of see what's out there. I appreciate, once again, I really, really appreciate you being a great audience. And I hope that I have not made you lose your appetite, because I believe that Kimberly mentioned about something about lunch. But if that's it, so thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Wow, standing ovation for
Well,
you.
thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you to our guests who are joining us virtually. Again, I want to thank you so much for making the effort to come out here today on a rainy day. This is just the beginning of the opportunities and events that are coming out of the hub. Here on the table, I have some information for you. I have a flyer about the rest of the speakers that we have between now and December. So we're going to be talking about digital transformation of the artist's craft. We are going to be talking about inclusive and accessible technology. And next month, it is Cybersecurity Month. So we have somebody from WMATA who's going to talk about transportation technology and how they keep us safe in our daily lives. We also have something called the Fireside Chat, and you all are extra lucky because our first speaker is here, Mr. Taj Thomas. So the fireside chat series, this is a little bit different than Future of Tech. With this one, we're going to be highlighting individuals in our community who have had a tech journey. So Mr. Thomas is going to talk to us about becoming an IT professional, and now he's an entrepreneur and runs a tech solutions business here in our community. So these will be in the evening, and we will have dinner served for you. So feel free to take these with you, and you already have the sneak peek if you want to chat with him as well. Last thing on the table, thank you, Eduardo. There are iPads, and we have a survey. If you could just take a few minutes to complete that. Let us know, what did you think? This was our first one. Can we make it better? Would you like to see something more? You can also sign up for our newsletter so that you can get more information about the events that are coming. The Hub is a vibrant, collaborative space. I hope that you come back for more events. We have an open lab as well. If you need a quiet place to work, you can come here, use a MacBook or an iPad. Some of our staff are here. We have Sozna, she's our part-time lab coordinator, and we have our student assistant, Luis, as well. So please come to the Hub. This is your home too. And thank you. Lunch is going to be out that door to the right. We also have our program assistant, Diana, who's standing at the end of the hallway. Go into Manatee 104, and we have 3 choices for lunch, and it's a box. So water, fruit, cookie, and a salad. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.